This video is dedicated to Robin. Love is a friendship set to music. Joseph Campbell.
You mentioned the speed of cross-border payments and the opaqueness of that process, and I guess it's also error-prone to some extent with SWIFT. Santander seems to be trying to approach it with a partnership with Ripple. Just curious what your thoughts are on that.
This is the Federal Reserve Board Governor, Lael Brainerd, answering a question in 2019 regarding Ripple.
I do think that of the use cases out there, cross-border is one of the most compelling. We know that intermediation chains cross-border are long and quite opaque, and they're slow, and they can be quite costly.
She knows what Ripple does and what problem they solve.
So my sense is that technology with appropriate safeguards could make a material impact and likely will, and it may well be through a partnership model. I don't want to pronounce on any particular approach.
There could be a partnership model, but she doesn't want to talk about it.
But there are a variety of partnerships out there that are trying to innovate and to reduce frictions and increase transparency for those cross-border transactions. In my sense, I'm fairly optimistic that there are some good solutions out there that don't necessitate a global stablecoin.
She was asked about Ripple and explains it doesn't have to be like Libra. Facebook's Libra is the global stablecoin. An ultra-liquid asset means that it's constantly being bought and sold. XRP is utility. It's efficiently dumping fiat for fiat.
I mean, we kind of thought that we could take a direct line to settling with a digital asset, and I think a lot of people thought that, well, now we have digital assets, let's just use them for payments, and that'll be that. Part of the problem is that the payment systems are just not capable of supporting instantaneous settlement. So
the retail payment infrastructure touches every American. That's why 1 year ago, the Federal Reserve committed to build its first major new payment system in 4 decades. Although no one anticipated at that time the challenges our nation would soon face, the COVID-19 pandemic has heightened the urgency and importance of delivering a resilient instant payment system that is accessible to all Americans.
This video was released August 13th, 2020, and it's discussing the progress of FedNOW. I believe that the U.S. government is going to utilize the base infrastructure of FedNOW to deliver stimulus money.
Should have equitable access. Through the direct connections we have with more than 10,000 banks, FedNOW will be broadly accessible. The FedNOW service will not only expand but also strengthen the U.S. payment infrastructure by operating alongside the private sector real-time payment RTP service. Many banks may choose to maintain access to more than one instant payment.
She's referring to the clearinghouse as the private sector's real-time payment service. The clearinghouse uses Finastra's software, and as you know, Finastra has partnered with Ripple. Finastra's customers have the choice of using ODL.
FedNOW service, including on the evaluation of prototypes of the core clearing and settlement functionality. Across the Federal Reserve System, work on FedNOW has continued apace, commensurate with the high priority of this initiative, even as we've been mobilizing an unprecedented response to the COVID-19 crisis. We have a team of over 100 people working on the program, including experts drawn from across our system and key hires from outside.
They're making progress with FedNOW, and COVID-19 is accelerating it. They're hiring people from the outside.
Since we initiated FedNOW 1 year ago, we've been hitting our program milestones. And today, I'm pleased to announce the Federal Reserve Board has approved the core features and functionality based on extensive input from stakeholders.
The Fed has approved the core features.
Loud and clear from stakeholders the primary importance of getting this service to market as quickly as possible. And to
Getting this service to market as quickly as possible.
meet this goal, we're announcing a phased approach that will enable the FedNOW service to get to market expeditiously with a core set of features, and then to expand available features over time in response to changes in technology and market needs.
The basic infrastructure is going to be set up first, and later they're going to add on to this.
for the FedNOW service to be interoperable with the private sector instant payment service to accomplish the goal of nationwide reach. As we've learned from experience with our other payment services, the form and timeline for achieving interoperability depends a lot on the level of commitment and engagement from stakeholders across the industry, including other instant payment settlement service operators, both present and future.
The basic infrastructure is going to be set up first. Interoperability from the start. The interledger protocol is basic infrastructure.
In part, to facilitate interoperability, the FedNOW design will use the widely accepted ISO 20022 message standard and other industry best practices.
I would agree that adoption of digital assets has been a little slower, you could see it as being incredibly quick or incredibly slow, depending on what time frame you think is reasonable. I would say revolutionizing international finance is not something that you would expect to happen overnight.
Ripple is part of the ISO standards body. Ripple has set up their whole system revolving around ISO 222. You can argue that FedNOW is a reaction to Swift's ISO delays.
In order to minimize time to market, additional features would be introduced in phases after launch.
The main infrastructure goes first, then fintechs will add on as we go forward.
It will be important for FedNOW to support alias-based payments.
Ripple recently announced PayID.
Payments that can be sent to a recipient using an alias such as an email address or phone number rather than requiring an account number.
The software that Ripple announced was custom-made for FedNOW. Ripple knew that this was an issue for FedNOW. That is why PayID was announced. And more importantly, it proves how much involvement Ripple has.
But providing this feature securely requires addressing legal, operational, and security challenges that would increase the time to market for the core service. So, in balancing those considerations, we decided to explore the best ways to add a directory service or other approach to alias-based payments with the goal of providing this as a high priority following the initial launch.
The basic infrastructure is going to happen first, and they're going to add on to it as they go. If a crisis happens and they need to adopt quicker, who are they going to turn to? They're going to turn to the public sector.
In today's event. So we've made tremendous progress on developing the service, and today's announcement by the Board of Governors marks an important milestone. At this stage, business requirements are complete for the core service.
The requirements for the core service is complete.
And we have seen prototypes of several design solutions.
Prototypes of several designs. Did Ripple submit a prototype?
The FedNOW team has also drafted ISO message flows and specifications for the initial release and is currently seeking industry input on these.
Ripple software is already set up for ISO standard.
Our goal is to publish final message specs by the first quarter of next year.
They will have message specifications by the first quarter of next year.
Implementing the FedNOW service as soon as possible remains a high priority for the Federal Reserve.
It's a high priority.
And we will provide periodic updates as key milestones are achieved.
Everything can happen out of the blue.
We are likewise finalizing our technology strategy that will incorporate a blend of internal Federal Reserve resources and partnerships with external vendors.
Remember that Ripple was part of the Faster Payments Task Force.
Our intention is to prioritize using resources and technologies to create a flexible infrastructure that is able to meet current as well as future needs.
Interoperability is key here. Flexible and able to meet future needs.
FedNOW is designed really to be basic infrastructure. It will be a platform, both flexible as well as neutral, that will give the industry the opportunity to really build those use cases off of.
It's going to be basic infrastructure, and the technology teams are going to develop on top of it.
I think at the most fundamental level, when you think about what's being delivered here, this service is designed to really be an interbank settlement engine that will allow funds transfers from a sender's bank account to a receiver's bank account in near real time.
This is not payment, this is settlement. It's going to happen in near real time.
At any time. So banks and their service providers are going to be able to build on this fundamental capability to offer what they deem to be value-added services to their own customers. I'm sure that over time, that as banks participate and their non-bank partners are involved, they will ultimately decide what is it the customer wants and how can they leverage this FedNOW platform to deliver that.
The Internet of Value is going to have many winners.
So, as Ken mentioned, what we are committed to do is to continually engage with the industry so that we understand what features and functionalities can be part of the FedNOW service that will ultimately support what the industry needs to deliver to their customers.
Crypto assets with real utility will be able to be used on top of the FedNOW platform.
But how's the Fed going to solve for interoperability with the existing private sector RTGS service for instant payment?
The RTGS service and interoperability. This is what Ripple did with the Bank of England in their proof of concept.
The Bank of England is a paid customer of Ripple's. There's another central bank we haven't announced that we're working with very actively.
In July, Ripple announced results of their collaboration with two of the world's leading central banks, the Federal Reserve and the Bank of England.
We are committed to advancing interoperability in order to achieve nationwide reach in instant payment. And of course, we know this is a high priority for industry as well.
It's a high priority for industry as well, meaning it can breathe life into the economy.
Now, of course, interoperability inherently requires collaboration. This is not something that we can do on our own.
The Fed is not a technology company. They're going to hire the experts. The experts are Ripple.
We really need the industry, stakeholders, banks, bank service providers, service operators. We all need to be working together and defining a common goal.
A level playing field.
So on our own, we are doing what we can to advance this goal. For instance, we believe that using the widely accepted ISO 20022 standard and other industry best practices will be helpful in removing unnecessary and burdensome things that might stand in the way of payment routing.
Everything that Ripple is building will be able to smoothly integrate into FedNOW.
Just to give you a sense of how we've been doing that and using that FedNOW community, last month we kicked off the FedNOW ISO 20022 working group. So that will be a group within the FedNOW community that's going to help us think about how that industry standard will affect message flows and individual message implementation guidelines.
ISO is a specific format. It's a common standard that all messages have to be within the banking world. The banks can exchange these messages without friction because they're all the same. And from the very beginning, Ripple has built their whole software suite off of the ISO standards.
So Governor Brainerd, will the FedNow service end up being replaced by things like Facebook Libra or central bank digital currencies?
As yields go negative, there is more of a need for CBDCs. The global economy is a ticking time bomb and they need to hurry. CBDCs will allow yields to go deeply negative. FedNow is a real-time payments platform that's going to have the infrastructure ready to handle CBDCs, but it is a real-time payments platform. This is why interoperability is key.
Efforts by global stablecoin networks such as Facebook's Libra to drive the next stage of payment innovation have raised some fundamental questions about legal and regulatory safeguards, financial stability, and even the appropriate role of private money. That has intensified calls for central banks to be looking at digital currencies in order to maintain the sovereign currency as the anchor of the nation's payment system. And
laws are reactionary. Things are going to quickly happen, and there will be emergency bills. However, they have been studying this for a while, and I can assure you it's not knee-jerk. Lael also mentioned a need to figure out how to keep the dollar as the center of payments That is why they can't take away too much of the role of the dollar. But the problem is cross-border. They need to update. What are their options? I believe this is where the escrow is key. It's a gift for the U.S. to bow out of the world reserve currency status.
As you know, China has been moving ahead rapidly on its work on a digital currency, building on the tremendous reach of its mobile payments platform.
China has an advantage of a CBDC right now. The more the trade war heats up, the closer we are.
Early days of the XRP ledger didn't involve Ripple, the company, at all. It was completely organic. Somebody opened a gateway, which is essentially a company that issues a stable coin in Chinese yuan, and there were remittance flows just immediately. There were flows in both directions. I think part of it might have been capital controls. People who really wanted to get money out of China were counterflows to the remittance flows. And they just found each other. And all of the liquidity was gone immediately, like in a couple of hours, and the liquidity just increased, and it ramped up to about $8 million a day.
Given all of that, given the dollar's important role, of course it's important for us as America's central bank to remain on the frontier of research and policy development regarding central bank digital currency. So we are engaging in research and experimentation. We're collaborating with other central banks.
They're collaborating with other central banks that are on the frontier of CBDC.
Regarding tokenization, that's something that we are evaluating right now. Likely will not be available in what I'll call an end-to-end solution in their early phases.
This platform is going to be a major hub in the Internet of Value.
The ability to offer what we shorthand call P2P services that let people use an email or a phone number is going to be an important feature at some point. What we had to ultimately think about, though, was the other push that we heard from the industry, and that is we need this service quickly.
The industry is pushing the Federal Reserve.
First, emphasize and prioritize getting the Fed service functionality delivered, get that infrastructure in place, and then we will very quickly turn to how could we enable directory functionality.
The yields curve going negative and China trade war is the gauge that we will use to determine how quickly this solution will be adopted.
Rather than work on that at the front end and extend the time to delivery, we're going to get really the baseline infrastructure out there as quickly as we can.
This is a major stepping stone in the Internet of Value. This open, updated platform is about to emerge. The USA will be able to compete with the rest of the world that's already updated. The Internet of Value is not going to happen without the USA. The slow-moving USA is jumping aboard. That means that the private asset network can be bridged with the rest of the world economy. R3 is building numerous national platforms. All nations will have this updated technology, and in the middle, it's RippleNet.
I think by creating that neutral platform, banks in partnership with these other kinds of companies will in fact be able to offer just much more innovative services.
Adapted to the real life situation that we were facing, we kind of had this idea that institutions would hold XRP or a digital asset, they'd make their payments with a digital asset, or regional hubs would settle with a digital asset.
It looks like the regional hubs are getting ready to settle with a digital asset.
And for a variety of reasons, the world wasn't quite ready for that.
It looks like we're ready. The goal of life is to make your heartbeat match the beat of the universe. To match your nature with nature. Joseph Campbell. Thank you for liking and subscribing. If you enjoy my work, please consider joining my Patreon.